Well, thank you, Curator Haggard, and good morning to everyone. We have a real hybrid communication opportunity this morning with those of you here in the room, those via the web, and certainly to curators Russell and Wassinger via the phone, so a multimedia opportunity. I would encourage everyone, at least in the room here in Kansas City, to perhaps hover around the screen to ease the view of the charts. There may be copies available in the back of the room for those of you that want to take advantage of that. And the rest of you can follow along on the screen via the web or in the room here. You know, it's a pleasure and honor for me to be with our faculty, with our staff and students, like here this week at our Board of Curators meeting at UMKC. Always an opportunity that I look forward to. I appreciate the opportunity to present an annual report, if you will, today on our University of Missouri. Normally, communication should be a good two-way with a good balance of talking and listening. My apologies for skewing toward one-way communications this morning in my limited time with you. I do intend for my comments to be directed to the Board of Curators, who dedicate so much of their time, so much passion, and at least in my past 2 years, patience, which I have much appreciated. But my comments are also directed to all of our constituents, all of those who serve and all of those that we serve in this great state of Missouri. You know, there are so many individuals and groups that I'd like to thank for their support in this past year and for their ongoing recognition of the role the University of Missouri plays in our state. From our Governor Jay Nixon to the General Assembly leadership, Senators Shields, Mayer, and Pierce, and Representatives Richard, Isett, and Kingery, and particularly to the delegations surrounding our campuses, I want to thank them for their tireless work in support of what we do. To our federal delegation, especially Senators Bond and McCaskill, and to all of our campus supporters, friends of the university, alumni, thank you as well. To the lifeblood of what we're about, our faculty, staff, and students, your continued commitment to excellence, your continued commitment to integrity and social responsibility has been nothing short of extraordinary. This morning, I'd like to recap 2009. Our accomplishments and challenges were many, as you know. I will talk about commitments, talk about challenges, talk about obligations as shared responsibilities for all of us. I will look to this year and the future with a focus on our priorities and with optimism, tempered with the diligence we need to have in the context of the economic challenges that our state and nation continue to face. Our mission is clear, and it is historic in how we uniquely serve the citizens of our state. Sometimes the awareness of this mission isn't as uniform in all corners, but I am convinced that staying true to this charge and doing it with quality and excellence is the best way to achieve our objective of making a difference. You know, at each Board of Curators meeting, I've asked our four chancellors to spend just a few minutes to provide their own bragging rights on accomplishments. And I will tell you, it's very tempting this morning to kind of let our time be devoted to bragging about what was accomplished last year. But I will be brief instead and ask that all of us be mindful of the effort made by all involved in the university last year, our land-grant research institution, our University of Missouri. A lot was accomplished. In our mission of teaching, record enrollment on all four of our campuses. Pretty amazing that 13,000 students have been added, if you count all aspects of that, in the past decade, a 24% increase in our mission of teaching. Our faculty have been recognized ranging from election to the National Academy of Science to the Priestley Medal. So congratulations to Dr. Robert Rickliffs and Fred Hawthorne. And just this week, Dr. Sandra Abel was named Distinguished Fellow by the National Science Teachers Association. Many of our departments also received national ranking status. Yesterday at UMKC, we heard that preparing our students for teachers, the Institute for Urban Education program, is just one of dozens of examples that we have where we're preparing preparing our mission of teaching and outreach for the future. In our mission of service, our Caring for Missourians leadership among Missouri's four-year public education institutions will produce more than 220 new and temporary positions for students in healthcare professions from our University of Missouri. Over 1,400, by the way, totally across all four-year public and two-year institutions in the state. Extension Services pitched in last year with added emphasis on small business support, growing and protecting Missouri jobs. And by the way, there are a multitude of service learning initiatives taken on by our students, such as Engineers Without Borders, and service that we heard last night at the UMKC Dental School. Almost $7 million in in-kind support is provided for those most in need in our state. In our mission of research, the spotlight is shining on all 4 of our campuses with federal grant applications and awards at record levels. Disclosures are up 18% for intellectual property pursuits, and we achieved more than $300 million in externally sponsored research, with Mizzou and its $205 million ranked roughly in the top 10% of over 600 institutions on this measure. And last year, the university committed an additional $2 million towards staff and related technology commercialization activities, a very clear signal of intent for the future. In 2004, the 4th component of our mission was added, our role in economic development. And this time in our economy, its relevance has never been more important. We highlighted in our Energy Summit last April the capabilities of that field for all to see. In addition to that, though, I'd like to thank George Paz at Express Scripts, Neil Patterson at Cerner, General Greg Martin at Fort Leonard Wood, and David Stewart at Worldwide Technologies for their confidence in the University of Missouri and in our ability to be a good partner with these important Missouri-based enterprises. Foundations like Kauffman and Reynolds continue to be supportive of our leading-edge initiatives at the UMKC's Block School and at Mizzou's J School, respectively. You know, the response of our supporters in this toughest of economic times perhaps shouldn't have been a surprise in that we surpassed in all cases last year our fundraising requirements and expectations, topped off by the $1 billion for all we call Mizzou campaign celebration in April, and Missouri S&T hitting its goal of $200 million 5 years before the end of the campaign was scheduled. A lot accomplished, and you'll hear more from Mike Nichols in a little bit about the economic development activities of the university. Our ongoing relevance to help businesses start up in or relocate to Missouri is evidenced by this graphic showing the 12 locations now operating or planned supported in these endeavors by the University of Missouri. We are advocates of Governor Nixon's jobs initiative, as well as MOSIRA legislation, which focuses on creating jobs in science and technology fields. So again, something very important that we are a key partner with the state and have, again, responsibility for infrastructure around the state that enables that to occur. On top of these core mission achievements, we took on many additional actions. And we believe those will accrue benefit to our university and to the state. We have held tuition flat last year and have proposed again for this coming year. We are leading the way, I believe, nationally with a performance management system, as well as a comprehensive set of campus-specific accountability measures. Our brand, if I can use that term, is enhanced by our student athletes on all 4 of our campuses. At Mizzou, that was apparent with 4 Big 12 conference titles last year, an Elite 8 run in basketball, and the 5th straight postseason football game, along with our student athletes leading all BCS schools in their academic progress report standard. Quite an accomplishment. But with all that, we asked ourselves last year, and continue to do that, by the way, is there more we can do in these times? Can we be even more relevant to the state and help be part of the solution to the challenges that our state and our nation faces? So we took on myriad additional activities positioned at that question. 2 task forces were aimed at the heart of our mission of teaching and learning. We have set the stage for the future of healthcare technology and excellence in patient care with the Tiger Institute supporting our MU Health System in partnership with the Cerner Corporation. We will take a proactive approach in each of our campus cities to seek new, innovative community campus partnerships to accelerate finding the creative solutions for our capital needs. All of this, I believe, has been significant, perhaps even unprecedented profile of engagement and results. It was done in the context of one of the most challenging backdrops that I have seen in my working career. And the constant headlines of economic peril of our country and our state had an impact on everything we did, as it did for every one of our internal and external constituents. We needed to act, and we did. We did not always perfectly execute or perhaps perfectly communicate, but we had the mindset of staying ahead, of looking around the corner to keep our mission strong. Thus, our actions began in 2008, in the fall of 2008 precisely, freezing positions and holding them open, reaching a peak of more than 600 positions that were held open, reaching agreement with the state on tuition and state revenue support. Tough decisions were taken on salaries and on benefits. And the outcome thus far is perhaps not as draconian as actions of others around the country, but I do accept, given some of the actions that we took, that may be, in fact, in the eye of the beholder. Some of our actions were very tough. At the same time, there has become a very vocal national discussion. You heard that from the President's State of the Union address this week about higher education. And it juxtaposes the combination of rising cost of a degree and the job market for graduates that has crashed dramatically around the country. All of these issues are very important for us to be engaged in, to have our own point of view established, and on many of them to, in fact, take action. These are national issues, but as you can imagine, those issues in Missouri are a mere image. So as we move into this third year of the recession cycle, it will continue to be challenging to fulfill all aspects of our mission. We have agreed again to hold in-state undergraduate tuition flat, but that is in exchange for a $24 million cut to our core budget. We will also incur a $15.5 million cut, or roughly 30%, on our non-core category activities. These so-called non-core activities, however, include funding for University Hospital, funding for telemedicine, and funding for the statewide education broadband network, MORENET. And as we know, as we look to 2012, absent a recovery in state revenues, another $24 million in federal stimulus money that today is in our budget, in our core budget, may be at risk. So this raises obviously very important planning questions for us. How do we prioritize our activities and our investments? How do we prepare for 2011 and 2012 in this context? But with all that as background, we remain confident and we remain investors in our state of Missouri and in our University of Missouri system. Our collective stewardship of this university has never been stronger, and it should give us confidence to invest as we have in the past. In our infrastructure, our $330 million bond and debt service initiative last year allows us to take care of critical infrastructure needs, allows us to deal with maintenance and repair on our 4 campuses, to invest in our strategic initiatives, as we've done last year on economic development and are making progress on e-learning, and in our students by foregoing increases that would have amounted to a cumulative $70 million over 5 years if we had adjusted tuition only by inflation. $70 million invested in our students if we had made adjustments in tuition by inflationary amounts. Those issues can make a difference. To fully do our part in the state to help build sustaining job growth and revenue growth, we are taking another investment step today. We are announcing that we will provide up to $5 million over the next 3 years in the University of Missouri Enterprise Investment Initiative. This program will support our researchers and faculty and those who may rely on university researchers to start up or stand up new companies in Missouri, to grow new jobs and create revenue streams for the university and, importantly, for the state. This kind of investment, in our view, is just one of many obligations that we take seriously in our stewardship role. It is the Missouri way of doing things, by the way. Our obligations cut across all of what we should be about: carrying out our mission with quality, ensuring accountability to our stakeholders, providing access and affordability for students as part of our land-grant mission, and respecting our faculty and staff as we engage them to find solutions. But I would submit to you that there is another set of obligations where we have to rely on and be supported more broadly by the state. And in this context, not just the General Assembly, not just the governor, but all of us have to recognize as citizens the role education plays in our state's past, and importantly or critically, the role that education will play in our future. So the question to citizens of Missouri, do we value education and are we willing to make it a priority? Do we collectively accept the obligation as stewards of public education and the investment, not just in dollars, required to keep that strong? So whether it's partnering with state leaders to leverage Missouri's balance sheet for accessing the capital markets, or partnering with the state and other institutions in our state for federal research support, these opportunities, in my view, require this notion of a shared obligation to make things work better. So in that regard, let me be very clear. Higher education needs money and support for its capital project needs. The specifics have been clear and well documented across this university, and by the way, our four-year public colleagues across the state. Whether it's classroom space, antiquated labs, the need for science and engineering buildings to be updated, maintenance and repair, the full gamut of needs have been identified. There will be no better time for the state to access the capital market via a bond initiative to address these capital needs than now. We have a AAA rating. We need to put that to use. Rates are still at historic lows, and there are incentives to move now. We are actually rolling off the 35-year-ago bond issue and its debt service. So education needs to lay claim to that line item. There would be, in essence, no new debt and no new debt service by simply rolling over the amounts that today are in the state's budget. Jobs, real jobs in construction would be created. The window will close likely this year, and I think that's well understood nationally and within our state. So the question is, what will Missouri do? What kind of stewards collectively will we be for the next generation, looking ahead, looking around the corner? You know, it's easy to look back and look in the rearview mirror sometimes and be critical. And in tough times and the challenging times we've had in the past year, couple of years, maybe that's not even fair. But the facts are that several years ago, public higher education accepted more state oversight of outcomes that we would be providing in exchange for capital project funding, 3 years of increased financial support, recognition of needed equity adjustments to strike a balance amongst four-year public institutions, a funding model that would recognize inflation support and enrollment growth, and incremental funding for a scholarship program called Access Missouri. So far, now, as we look in that rearview mirror, we have received 2 years of that incremental funding, which has not yet gotten us back to 2001 absolute funding levels. During that time, as I've already stated, we have grown our enrollment by 24% just in our University of Missouri system with no new state support. And while a select group of lobbyists will tell you otherwise, my sampling of Missourians says that we should be shocked that the Access Missouri Scholarship Program implemented during that cycle can now support a student going to a public institution by $1,500 per student per year and $3,150 for a student to go to a private institution on what is now a $90 million scholarship fund. So again, looking back in that rearview mirror, certainly, as we made those agreements, not the balance we would have expected for the results of Senate Bill 389. While no one, including me, likes to talk about taxes, let me put it in different terms. Let me put it in terms of state revenue either foregone or perhaps diverted. Again, facts are that since 1997, thanks to a series of a la carte tax policy changes, state revenues have been reduced by $800 million. In 1 year alone last year, more than $500 million in tax credits were applied, again, diverting state revenues, in many cases, by the way, to very worthy projects. Make no mistake about that, very worthy projects. However, that's a total of $1.3 billion in revenues foregone or diverted by our state. So again, back to this notion of commitments and obligations. Could some of this revenue leakage have been used to fund or build a new state cancer hospital to replace our state's 50-year-old Ellis Fischel Cancer Center? Could some of that money have been used to plug holes in our budget for programs like telemedicine, where we link Missouri's underserved rural areas and healthcare patients with the state's best healthcare professionals? Could some of that money been used to keep the light burning on science, engineering, math, and technology programs which are being cut in public elementary and secondary schools? Could some of that money be found to sustain caring for Missourians by continuing to educate more healthcare professionals, including programs that are now in jeopardy, like the joint pharmacy program between UMKC and Missouri State that leverages infrastructure that's been built and could be extended very efficiently? So again, not advocating tax increases this morning, talking about the need to understand what has happened to our revenue picture in this state. There are no easy decisions here, only hard choices, but we can't not have this discussion in our state. It has to be part of our conversation. This chart I've used several times in these board meetings. By now, it's termed my favorite chart. Probably a long story associated with that. But this chart shows a myriad of data from student growth to growth in tuition to state appropriations, and indicates now over the past decade a 31% efficiency improvement. A 31% efficiency improvement. I believe it's a telling chart. And I think it harkens back to the question, are we good stewards of the investments that have been made in our university system? But it also raises the question of how will our mission be affected in the next 2 years? Can we sustain that type of continued efficiency improvement without impact on the mission of those we serve, of teaching, of research, of economic development and service? So the record, I believe, clearly shows that we've been doing a lot more with less and have avoided thus far a slip in quality and that slippery slope of doing less with less. So the choices we've made thus far and the stewardship of the university, I think, bode a very good story by this chart, but the question is about the future. As always, I believe we need to look at the challenges first amongst ourselves. In October, I suggested a number of areas that represent part of the national discussion about the value of higher education that should be examined. We will need to test these paradigms with our best thinking and shared governance approaches. As a result, I've asked our campus and system leadership to shine a spotlight on these points in 2010 and give us their best thinking during the course of the year. You've heard a lot about e-learning in the past 24 hours already. I've asked Chancellor Deaton and the system office to partner on that important initiative. Degree completion strategies, again, part of the national discussion about how do we get more of our citizens through the pipeline. I've asked UMKC and Chancellor Morton to provide, UMSL and Chancellor George to provide leadership on that important initiative. Being sure that there's a clear pathway for students in junior high school community colleges, and within our own campus systems to be sure that they can have a chance to get that degree. I've asked UMKC, Chancellor Morton, and Provost Hackett to take a look at this particular issue. Outside in, we had a task force last year that was attempting to ensure that we were meeting the needs of national and Missouri employers. I want to focus that even more finely on areas that will clearly represent job growth in the future around math, engineering, technology, and science needs. I've asked Missouri S&T in partnership with the other 2 engineering schools in our system to look at that. And the entire system will take a look at this issue of a 3-year degree cycle. And by the way, that cycle is not to devalue our degree or cause less hours to be required or created. It's to ensure that for those students that want to accelerate their process, that we have a very efficient way for that to occur. 2 years ago, shortly after I began in this role as president of the Missouri system, I had a chance to have lunch with a man who has been one of our state's recent great philanthropists, entrepreneurs, supportive education, and benefactor to our university. During that lunch, Des Lee, then 90 years old, looked across the table and asked me very directly, and I found out later that was his MO, "What's your plan? What are you going to accomplish in your first year? What's your 5-year plan? How can I help?" Now again, this is 2 months on the job, and I was still finding my way around Highway 70 and 63. In our subsequent few times ago, it was pretty clear you better have some answers to Des's question. Desmond Lee, as you know, passed away a few weeks ago, and I shared with his son Gary my discussions with his father and my conclusions. You better show up with passion. You better take your stewardship seriously, and hope is not a plan. What's your plan? You better be the loudest advocate for your mission. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we do have a plan. It will require our collective stewardship, our passion. I believe the work that's been done by all of us to ensure that our accountability measures, our access and success are transparent, are front and center in all we do, will provide that reference point. But rest assured, our ability to anticipate those changes around us and to lead and to do that with advocacy will be the measure that we'll be held to. I'm reminded that we are a very special interest group, and our advocacy and collective voice must be heard. Our state depends on it, our constituents depend on it, and I want to thank you for your continued support. Thank you.